Hello, it's me again with my really shabbily shot videos, but I'm hoping that if you can withstand my unprofessional videos, you'll like my professional information I'm sharing with you. So this will probably be part one of trees because there's so much to talk about when it comes to trees, and there's so many different types of trees out on the market. So try to keep up. I am trained Society of Master Saddlers, saddle fitters, qualified saddle fitters in the UK. So I am a big fan of wood and steel trees, which, have been the foundation of most English saddles historically. So when we're talking a wood and steel tree, we're literally talking about wood and metal, okay? So on this saddle here, when they make a tree, you actually get multiple layers of laminated wood. Usually a hardwood like a cherry is skyed right down thin, and then they lay it on a form with glue and heat and moisture, and it forms to the shape of the mold that we're making the tree in. And then they go around and reinforce it with the metal. This is spring steel in the middle. So when we say a wooden steel spring tree, this is your spring metal coming across it. That gives us flexion front to back. And then we have reinforced metal just to keep the frame of the shape of the tree after it's been molded this way. Sometimes they will take it out and they will wrap it in a paint or glue covered hessian. You can see that sort of hessian material in here, and that's just another way of doing it, sometimes because it's thinner, and this just gives it a little bit more reinforcing as well. But again, steel, spring steels. Okay, at the front of the tree here we have the head plate. Okay, so the head plate is the metal here that forms your gullet, your channel. This is the channel of the tree for your horse's withers, okay? And there's a lot of discussion these days about tree point length and how it affects the horses, because the number one rule is being that we don't want any contact on the side of the withers, and we don't want any contact at the base of the withers. We want this all out onto the rib cage, and of course behind the scapula, okay? So when we are talking about tree point length, what we are talking about here is measurement from here to the end of the metal. Sorry, I'll do it this way. So most of my saddles, the NSC saddles, and most of the UK saddles measure 19.5 centimeters, okay? So that's from the middle of the head plate out to the tree point out here that's reinforced with the wood behind it. 19.5 centimeters. That is a industry standard for UK made saddles. We find that allows us to get down low enough and also give enough space in here for the horses and to support itself. When you get into the shorter areas is when you can cause a lot of problems. On really round horses, traditionally a shorter tree point will work fine because the horse is rounder and these don't have to go down as far and they don't have as high withers. But the higher the withers, the longer tree point we need. And then we want to reinforce it. When we talked about flared trees at the front, it's like this, where it's just tilted slightly to the front. It's not a complete V at the front here. Straight, it's a little bit angled. So of course the scapula can move underneath the saddle as you're moving. So this would be the top of the saddle, right? So when we make the head plate, it actually slides on like a sleeve here, reinforced over the top, reinforced in the bottom, riveted. Sometimes there's rivets in the middle. Most of the time they're down the side. These are what go sometimes. The little head of the rivet here will pop off, and that allows the squeak to start, okay? Then it will squeak, and then often it will crack through the metal and then crack through the wood. I think we talked about this before. The stirrup bar is held on by 2 rivets here and 2 rivets here. It's your stirrup bar, okay? So you have a bunch of rivets reinforcing the head plate onto here. This has to be 100% solid. No flex in there whatsoever. That is supporting your weight. Usually a girth billet coming off of here. When you're rising, when you're jumping, everything is compounded on here on the horse. This is why tree point length is so important, and this is why soundness of the tree is so important. When we talk about the spring steel, that's these parts here. There's a little bit of give front and back. This spring steel is allowing it to bounce back. So we're bending the wood a bit, a little bit of give in there. When they make your seat to ride in, the cantle is attached separately to the rest of the tree. See that? So the cantle is riveted onto the actual tree. And then when they get the saddle to this point, they will put webbing coming off the cantle, crisscross, straight across, over the top, and it forms the seat. So you're kind of sitting in like a hammock. Let's say it's super soft. And then on top of that webbing, they'll put a piece of foam. So you're actually not sitting on any structure of the tree. You're suspended a little bit. It also makes the cantle super important. If you ever drop your saddle on the cantle, because of all this extra pressure going on it, if you drop your saddle onto the cantle, it can just snap with all the pressure and break, and then your tree is no good either, okay? We talked a bit about the difference between a dressage saddle and a jumping saddle to do with the stirrup bar length. So here, this is a dressage saddle. And this is a jump saddle. Do you see the difference in the length there? So this one is closer to the front of the tree. This one is extended from the front of the tree. See? And then, of course, cantles. Short cantle, high cantle. Okay? Again, spring steel. This guy here, again, it's a dressage saddle. You can see the bar is extended. Short bar. Okay, that's your big differences between jump and dressage. Now, when we talk about tree points, I told you that industry standard mostly in the UK is 19.5 centimeters from the center out to the tree point, okay? So this one looks longer, but watch this. On this jumping saddle here, there's no extension on the wood. But when I go in here and measure, it's exactly 19.5 as well. So whilst it's shorter, it's still got the same support. This is really important in jump saddles. Jump saddles take the most force when we are landing on fences or we're up in our 2-point position. A lot of saddles, and you're going to think I'm bashing on French again, French saddles have very, very short tree points. And if you imagine where that pressure is ending up on the horse with a short tree point, your stirrup bars, all that force coming off, we end up with these horses with those top lines that you've seen all over social media. We're seeing giant atrophy pockets at the base of the withers. We're seeing giant atrophy pockets behind the scapulas. We are seeing weakened top lines. And people are, oh no, that's just a fit horse. That is not true. Horses' backs should not look like that. And we are seeing it happening so much, particularly with eventing horses, because jump saddles, here you go, French jump saddles were designed to jump a course. They were designed for you to go into the ring and jump a course in 2 or 3 minutes and get off the saddle. A bit of cantering, bit of jumping. They were not meant for flat work. They were not meant for long distance cross country. They were not meant for you to be in. If you go back and look at what jump saddles are designed for, they are for jumping, okay? Up in 2-point, around you go, get off. They are not meant for everyday riding, and everybody does it. If you can afford one of these saddles, you may not be able to afford a secondary saddle to ride in. So I'm seeing more and more people riding in these saddles constantly, and I am seeing the effects in these horses' backs, okay? Also, there is a movement right now of not riding in half pads with jump saddles. That is not acceptable either, because the foam panels on these saddles are causing too much pressure on these horses' back. I've gone off on a tangent, so let's go back to trees and we'll talk about that another time. So, now we will look at some different types of saddles here. So, this is a Bates or a Wintec tree, okay? So they are a plastic with a piece of foam on top for the rider. You have one single rivet holding both your stirrup bar on both ends, and a giant arch in the middle here, okay? Now watch what happens when I bend this. Super bendy, okay? Some of the more modern ones are reinforced with a bit of steel, but they're still super flexible. They're also what I call banana shaped. Do you see that? These synthetic trees are made for the riders. There is no horse's back in this shape. What it is creating is a seat. That's it. It's creating a seat for the rider, okay? So then what they do is they'll put a really deep gusset panel down here and a panel at the front to try to make this stabilize on the horse. Really great if you have a sway-backed horse. Not so great if you don't. And we end up having to use a lot of flocking or whatever to try to balance the saddle. This one doesn't have the gullet plate in it, but normally there would be a gullet plate here and it gets screwed in out here. So you've probably seen them, the gullet plates go in and out. Bates and Wintec do this. There's a bunch of saddles on the market now with the changeable head plates, but these designed for that. When we talk about our wood and steel tree again, the beauty of these is that they are made for both the horse and the rider, okay? So from front to back, way flatter for the horse, and then they put the seat on top for the rider, okay? They create that sling for the rider, but on the bottom, we have a much flatter platform for the horses. So these are designed for both animals, or both the horse and the rider. Now this is a French jump saddle tree, okay? I'm not gonna say the brand, it's irrelevant because a lot of them are like this. So a couple very interesting things, and I want you guys to pay attention to this so much. When I'm talking about French saddles, I'm talking about Butte, Antares, Shildrick, Devacou, Calibra, CWD, Voltaire, okay? That's what I'm talking about, saddles made in France. Number one, 3 points. 17.5, okay? That is 2 centimeters shorter than the other saddles, okay? Shorter 3 points. This is very significant. Do you see how far pointed these 3 points are? So now they are pointing towards the back of the scapula. Do you see that? They are not heading straight down. I might even have one here that's pointing backwards. Maybe I don't. But you can see straight down. This guy is pointed forward. So now on landing, this short little point is going to jab the horse in the back of his scapula, okay? Again, we talked about how close that stirrup bar is to the front and how your leg will end up there. So now we have extra weight at the front because now your seat is to the front, your balance point is over the front, and these 3 points are to the front, okay? Same idea. Doesn't have the spring steel. A lot of jump saddles are rigid trees, which is what this is. It doesn't have that flexion front to back. Really, we don't want super flexible trees for jumping because they take the brunt of that force, right? They take so much pressure upon landing. Very, very simple saddle. Okay, this one actually has a very interesting sort of glued on seat. Little bit of webbing here for the stirrups or the girth, and then a piece of foam over the top. Not made for super comfort because you're not supposed to be riding in them for long periods of time. So short points, okay? This is a Kiefer tree, okay? So Kiefer trees, synthetic, okay? But they made it a little flatter. And foam on top for the rider. A heavy gullet plate through the middle here. And a little bit of reinforcement through here. So 3 point, let's have a look. Oops, sorry. And these two are at 19.5. So German saddle on a synthetic tree. Okay. And the longest tree points sort of on the market really are your Steuben ones. So Steuben is all about long tree points, long tree points, long tree points. That's great. Great on some horses. And maybe not so great on some others, especially your super widies, right? They measure 22. Okay, so much longer, same idea. They actually use a polymer or a synthetic material on the tree, spring steel, webbing seat. They've just used this plastic instead of the wood that the other guys did. Again, German saddle idea. I guess Switzerland, I want to say. Stirrup bar towards front. This is a jump saddle. They have a rounded back, nice flat tree. So, you know, Steuben have come a long way, but they do have that longer tree point. So we will talk about that again, why that's good, why it's not so good. Take care.